The Cathedral of St. Augustine stood like a monument to old money and older traditions, its Gothic spires reaching toward a sky that seemed to mock Sofia Martinez with its perfect blue serenity. Inside, the space had been transformed into something from a fairy tale, or perhaps a nightmare, depending on your perspective. White roses cascaded from every available surface, their perfume so thick it was almost suffocating. Crystal chandeliers threw dancing light across marble floors polished to mirror brightness. 400 guests filled the pews, their designer clothes and glittering jewelry representing more combined wealth than Sofia could comprehend. She stood in the bride's preparation room, staring at her reflection in a floor-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. The wedding gown was a masterpiece of French silk and Belgian lace, custom designed by someone whose name she still stumbled over when trying to pronounce it. It had probably cost more than her mother had earned in 5 years of managing the Rothwell estate's household staff. At 23, Sofia had simple dreams that felt impossibly distant now. She wanted to finish her pre-med studies, become a family doctor, maybe open a clinic in her old neighborhood where people could get care regardless of their ability to pay. She wanted to make her mother proud, to honor the sacrifices her parents had made when they immigrated from Mexico with nothing but hope and determination. Instead, she was wearing a gown that felt like a costume and preparing to marry a man who looked at her like she was something unpleasant he had stepped in. Her mother, Rosa, stood behind her with tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. Rosa had worked for the Rothwell family for 22 years, starting as a maid and working her way up to head housekeeper through sheer competence and dedication. She wore a dove-gray dress that Sofia knew she had saved for months to afford, wanting to look dignified at her daughter's wedding. "Mija," Rosa whispered, her accent thickening with emotion, "you don't have to do this. We can walk out right now. I don't care about the money." But Sofia knew that was not entirely true. The offer that had brought them to this moment was too significant to dismiss easily. Edmund Rothwell, patriarch of the family and Damien's grandfather, had made them a proposal that felt medieval but desperately tempting. Marry Damien, help reform him, and in return, Sofia's student loans would disappear. Her parents would receive a retirement fund that would let them stop working themselves to exhaustion. A trust would be established for Sofia's future. The reason was simple, brutal, and increasingly public. Damien Rothwell, the 28-year-old heir to a pharmaceutical fortune, had become a tabloid disaster. Photos of him leaving clubs with different women each week, videos of reckless behavior on yachts, stories of gambling losses that would fund small nations, the Rothwell name was becoming synonymous with entitled excess. Edmund's solution was straight from another century, but his desperation was modern. He needed someone grounded to anchor his grandson, someone real who might remind Damien what mattered beyond champagne and Instagram followers. And he knew Sofia. She had grown up playing in the estate gardens while her parents worked, always polite, always studying, always striving for something better. The arrangement had been presented as a merger of sorts. Sofia would get financial security. Damien would get a chance at redemption. The family would get its reputation back. Everyone would benefit. What Edmund had not accounted for was that his grandson viewed the arrangement as the ultimate humiliation. Sofia had met Damien twice before this day. The first time, he had looked her up and down with barely concealed contempt, his ice-blue eyes cold and dismissive. He had asked if she understood that being married to him would not make her one of them, that she would always be the housekeeper's daughter playing dress-up. The second meeting, he had been drunk, slurring insults about opportunistic social climbers who saw his family as a lottery ticket. Sofia had walked away with tears burning behind her eyes but her spine perfectly straight, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her break. Now, as the wedding march began to play, Sofia felt her heart hammer against her ribs with a mixture of dread and strange determination. The doors opened, revealing an aisle that seemed to stretch for miles, lined with faces she did not know. Some looked curious, others judgmental, many simply bored, as if this was just another society event to endure. At the altar stood Damien Rothwell, looking like he had stepped from the pages of a magazine. His tuxedo was custom-tailored, fitting his tall frame perfectly. Dark hair styled with calculated casualness, sharp features that would have been handsome if not for the expression of barely contained resentment. His blue eyes, the color of winter ice, fixed on her with something that might have been hatred. Beside him stood his older brother, Marcus, the responsible one who actually worked at the family company and avoided scandals. Marcus's expression was carefully neutral, but Sophia caught a flicker of sympathy as she approached. Edmund sat in the front row, his jaw set with determination, his hands gripping the armrests of his wheelchair so tightly his knuckles had gone white. He was 78, weakened by the heart condition that everyone pretended was not serious but everyone knew was killing him. This wedding was his last attempt to save his favorite grandson. The officiant, a distinguished man with silver hair and kind eyes, began the ceremony with traditional words that felt surreal in this situation. Sophia clutched her bouquet of white orchids so tightly she worried the stems might snap. She tried to focus on the stained glass windows behind the altar, on the religious imagery that was supposed to provide comfort, on anything except the man standing beside her who radiated hostility like heat from a furnace. The ceremony proceeded with painful slowness. Readings were read, hymns were sung, and through it all, Damien stood rigid, his face a mask of cold indifference. When they were asked to face each other for the vows, Sophia forced herself to meet his eyes. What she saw there made her breath catch. Not just resentment, but something deeper. Pain, perhaps. Fear. Vulnerability hidden beneath layers of entitled cruelty. The officiant cleared his throat, his voice carrying across the hushed cathedral. Damien Alexander Rothwell, do you take Sophia Elena Martinez to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward? The silence that followed was deafening. 1 second passed. Then 2. Then 5. Sophia watched something shift in Damien's expression. The mask cracked, revealing something uglier beneath. He turned slowly to face the congregation, and a smile spread across his face that made her blood run cold. You all actually believe this is real? His voice rang out clear and cutting, designed to carry to every corner of the cathedral. That I would marry the maid's daughter because my grandfather demanded it? Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Sophia felt the floor tilt beneath her, felt 400 pairs of eyes turn to stare at her. Her mother's sharp intake of breath was audible even from rows back. Look at her, Damien continued, gesturing towards Sophia with casual cruelty. She is probably a perfectly nice girl. Makes good coffee or cleans houses well or whatever it is her family does. But this? He gestured between them with dismissive contempt. This is absurd. A dying old man's desperate attempt to control me using the most ridiculous bribe imaginable. Edmund tried to stand from his wheelchair, his face flushed with anger and shame. Damien, stop this now. Oh, grandfather, I think everyone deserves honesty, don't you? Damien pulled off his bow tie and tossed it onto the altar like discarding trash. I am not a performing monkey. I will not marry some random girl to make you feel better about your legacy. Find another way to repair the family reputation. He turned back to Sophia then, and for just a moment, something flickered in his eyes that might have been regret. But it vanished instantly, replaced by cold indifference. Sorry, Sophia. Nothing personal. You seem sweet enough, but I am not the prince in your Cinderella fantasy. You can keep the dress though. Consider it payment for your time. With that, Damien Rothwell walked down the aisle, his footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. The massive cathedral doors slammed behind him with a finality that made Sophia flinch. The space erupted into chaos. Whispered conversations exploded into full volume. Phones appeared as guests began texting, posting, recording. Camera flashes went off like lightning strikes. People stood, craning their necks, eager to witness every moment of this spectacular disaster. Sophia stood frozen at the altar, the white orchids slipping from her numb fingers and scattering across the marble floor like broken pieces of a dream. Her vision blurred as the room swam around her. She was vaguely aware of her mother rushing toward her, of her father's face gone scarlet with humiliation and rage, of the officiant's stammered attempts to restore order. But mostly, she was aware of Edmund Rothwell, who had collapsed back into his wheelchair, his head in his hands, looking every one of his 78 years and then some. His shoulders shook with what might have been sobs, and Sophia felt an unexpected wave of pity for this powerful man brought low by his grandson's cruelty. Marcus approached her carefully, his expression genuinely apologetic. "Sophia, I am so sorry. My brother is a selfish fool who does not deserve your kindness or anyone else's." She found her voice, though it came out smaller and shakier than she intended. "It is fine. He is right." This was absurd from the start. But even as she said the words, even as her mother wrapped protective arms around her and began guiding her back down that endless aisle past hundreds of pitying and curious stares, something changed inside Sophia Martinez. Not anger, exactly, though that would come later in private moments. Not even hurt, though that too would arrive in waves. It was something colder and more focused. A resolution, a promise to herself. She had agreed to this arrangement to help her family, to build a better future. She had been willing to give a stranger a chance, to try to make something real from an artificial beginning. And he had thrown it all back in her face in the cruelest, most public way imaginable. As she reached the cathedral entrance, still in her wedding gown that suddenly felt like a symbol of every humiliation she had ever endured, Sophia made herself a vow. If their paths ever crossed again, she would not be the humiliated bride. She would be something else entirely. She just did not know yet that fate and Edmund Rothwell's stubbornness had very different plans for her future. 3 months had passed since the cathedral disaster, and Sophia had done everything possible to rebuild her shattered dignity. She had thrown herself into her studies with fierce determination, spending long nights in the university library until security guards had to escort her out. Her pre-med courses demanded every ounce of focus she possessed, and she welcomed the distraction. Organic chemistry equations and anatomy diagrams left no room for memories of 400 pitying stares or the sound of cathedral doors slamming shut on her humiliation. She had picked up extra shifts at Morrison's Diner, the 24-hour establishment near campus where she had worked since freshman year. The regulars had been kind, pretending not to recognize her from the viral videos and tabloid covers. The story had eventually faded from headlines, replaced by newer scandals and fresher disasters. Sophia was grateful to return to anonymity, to being just another exhausted student juggling work and education. Her parents had stopped apologizing during dinner, though Sophia still caught her mother staring at her sometimes with an expression of profound guilt. Rosa had offered to quit working for the Rothwell family, but Sophia had refused to let her sacrifice a job she had built over 2 decades. It was not Rosa's fault that Edmund's plan had failed so spectacularly. On a Tuesday evening, as Sophia sat in her usual corner booth at the diner reviewing notes for an upcoming exam, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost ignored it, assuming it was another telemarketer, but something made her answer. "Miss Martinez, this is Edmund Rothwell." His voice sounded older than she remembered, weakened and tired. "I need to speak with you. It's about Damien." Sophia's first instinct was to hang up immediately. The last thing she needed was to be dragged back into the Rothwell family drama. The humiliation had finally started to fade. Her classmates had stopped whispering when she entered lecture halls. She had begun to feel like herself again. "Mr. Rothwell, with all due respect, I think we have both endured enough public embarrassment," she said quietly, aware of curious glances from nearby tables. "Damien is in the hospital." Edmund's voice cracked with emotion. "Critical condition. Car accident. He was racing someone's Lamborghini at 3 in the morning, drunk and reckless as always. The other driver walked away with minor injuries. Damien has 4 broken ribs, a collapsed lung, severe concussion, and his right leg is held together with surgical pins. The doctors say recovery will take 8 months, possibly longer." Sophia closed her textbook slowly, her heart constricting despite her best efforts to remain detached. "I am sorry to hear that, Mr. Rothwell, but I don't understand why you are calling me." "Because he needs help. Real help." Edmund's breathing sounded labored, as if the conversation itself exhausted him. "Not nurses who will treat him like royalty because of his name. Not therapists he can manipulate into prescribing whatever he wants. He needs someone who will not tolerate his nonsense, someone who will make him face what he has become." There was a long pause before Edmund continued, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "He needs you." "You cannot be serious," Sophia said, anger finally breaking through her careful composure. "Your grandson humiliated me in front of hundreds of people. He called me a charity case, mocked my family, and walked out like I was nothing. And now you want me to what, exactly? Play nursemaid to the man who treated me like garbage? I am dying, Miss Martinez." The words fell like stones into water, creating ripples of silence. "The heart condition is worse than anyone knows. The doctors give me 4 months, maybe 6 if I am fortunate. Before I go, I need to know that my grandson has a chance at a real life, not the hollow existence he has been living." Sophia felt her throat tighten despite her determination to remain unmoved. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Marry him. For real this time, in a private ceremony with just family present. Then take him to your apartment during his recovery. I will pay for everything, round-the-clock medical support, physical therapy equipment, your lost wages from the diner, your tuition. Everything. But you will be there, keeping him grounded, showing him what real life looks like beyond penthouses and trust funds." "He humiliated me," Sophia repeated, her voice shaking now. "In front of everyone I knew and hundreds of strangers. That video is still online. People still recognize me and whisper about it." "I know." Edmund's voice was heavy with shared shame. "And if you say no, I will understand completely and never contact you again. But I am asking anyway because I am desperate and because I see something in you that I have not seen in anyone else who has entered my grandson's orbit. You are not impressed by money. You are not afraid of hard work. And you cared for him once, did you not? When you were children playing in the estate gardens." Sophia's breath caught. She had forgotten that Edmund might have noticed those stolen glances, the way 10-year-old Sophia would watch 12-year-old Damien practice tennis from behind the rose bushes, convinced he was the most magnificent boy in the world. Before wealth and privilege had twisted him into someone cruel. That was a child's fantasy, Mr. Rothwell. It had nothing to do with reality. Perhaps. But fantasies sometimes show us what we truly want, even when we are too practical to admit it. Edmund's voice softened further. 1 year, Miss Martinez. Give him 1 year of your life. If he is still the same selfish boy at the end, you walk away with enough money to finish medical school debt-free and never think of us again. But if there is even a chance that the person I raised is still buried somewhere beneath all that pain and rebellion, does he not deserve someone willing to help him find his way back?" Sophia stared at her reflection in the diner window, seeing a young woman exhausted from working double shifts and studying until dawn. She was 23 years old, drowning in student debt that grew larger every semester. She was watching her dream slip further away with each passing month, watching her parents work themselves to exhaustion because retirement seemed impossible. This was insane. Completely insane. "I need time to think about it," she heard herself say. "You have 48 hours. After that, I will find another solution, though I doubt any will work as well." Edmund paused. "And Miss Martinez? Thank you for not hanging up immediately. That alone gives me more hope than I have felt in months." The call ended, leaving Sophia sitting in the diner booth with cold coffee and impossible choices. She thought about dignity and pride, about humiliation and revenge. She thought about her parents' arthritic hands and tired eyes. She thought about her own dreams deferred and delayed, but mostly, she thought about a 10-year-old boy who had once helped her rescue a baby bird that had fallen from its nest, who had carefully constructed a makeshift home for it and checked on it every day until it could fly. She wondered what had happened to that boy, and whether he was truly gone forever. 47 hours later, Sophia walked into Mercy General Hospital wearing jeans and a simple sweater, carrying a small bouquet of daisies from the hospital gift shop. She had not told her parents where she was going, had not consulted friends or sought advice. This decision felt too personal, too complicated to explain. Edmund met her in the hospital chapel, looking friendlier than she remembered. His wheelchair seemed too large for his diminishing frame, and his eyes held the particular brightness of someone running on borrowed time and sheer determination. "You came," he said, and the relief in his voice was palpable. "Against every ounce of common sense I possess," Sophia replied, sitting down beside him in the empty chapel. "But I need you to understand something, Mr. Rothwell. I am not doing this because I believe Damien will change. I am not doing this because I have romantic fantasies about saving him. I am doing this because you are dying, because my family needs security, and because 1 year of my life is a reasonable price for the opportunities you are offering." "I understand," Edmund said quietly. "And I appreciate your honesty. There will be rules," Sophia continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I will care for him during his recovery. I will be civil and professional. But I will not tolerate disrespect or cruelty. If he treats me the way he did at the cathedral, I walk away immediately, contract or no contract. Do we have an understanding?" "We do." Edmund reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "I had my lawyers draw up an agreement that protects both of you. Your tuition paid in full, a trust fund established in your name regardless of the outcome, your parents' retirement secured. In return, you stay for 1 full year from the date Damien is released from the hospital. After that, you are free to divorce him if you choose, with no penalties or obligations." Sophia read through the contract carefully, her pre-law roommate's voice in her head reminding her to check every clause. It was generous, almost absurdly so. Edmund was essentially paying her to give his grandson one last chance at redemption. "Where is Damien now?" she asked. "In his room, sedated. He does not know you are here. I thought it best to have the ceremony first, before he can object or cause another scene." The wedding, if it could be called that, took place 30 minutes later. Damien was wheeled into the chapel in a hospital bed, still groggy from pain medication. His right leg was encased in a full cast, his ribs wrapped in compression bandages. Bruises colored his face in shades of purple and yellow, and his usually perfect hair was matted and unkempt. When he saw Sophia, confusion flickered across his face, followed by recognition, then something that might have been shame. "What is she doing here?" he asked, his voice rough from the breathing tube that had only been removed that morning. "She is here to marry you," Edmund said firmly. "And before you make another scene, you should know that the alternative is complete disinheritance. Every account frozen, every property seized, every connection severed. You will leave this hospital with nothing but the clothes you are wearing." Damien's eyes narrowed. "You would not do that." "I absolutely would. You have given me no choice." Edmund's voice carried steel beneath the weakness. "Sophia has agreed to care for you during your recovery, to give you 1 year to prove you are not a complete waste of the potential you were born with. If you have any decency left, any shred of the boy I raised, you will accept this gift with gratitude." "Gift?" Damien laughed bitterly, then winced as the movement jarred his broken ribs. "You are blackmailing me into marriage. How is that a gift?" "Because she said yes despite how you treated her," Marcus said quietly from the corner where he had been standing as witness. "That alone makes her better than you deserve." The chaplain, a kind-faced woman who had agreed to perform the ceremony despite its unusual circumstances, cleared her throat gently. "Shall we begin?" The ceremony took less than 10 minutes. There were no flowers except Sophia's simple daisies, no music except the distant sounds of the hospital, no guests except Marcus and a sympathetic nurse who served as the second witness. When the chaplain pronounced them husband and wife, there was no kiss, just Damien's hollow stare and Sophia's carefully neutral expression. Edmund gripped Sophia's hand afterward, his fingers trembling with emotion. "Thank you," he whispered. "You have given me something I thought impossible. Hope." 2 days later, after Damien had been cleared for discharge, Sophia found herself maneuvering his wheelchair through the narrow doorway of her studio apartment. The space that had always felt cozy suddenly seemed impossibly small with his presence filling it. The apartment was one main room that served as bedroom, living area, and study space. A kitchenette barely large enough for one person occupied one corner. The bathroom was tiny, definitely not designed for someone in a full-leg cast. Everything was clean but worn, second-hand furniture mixed with items salvaged from thrift stores. Damien looked around with an expression Sophia could not quite read. "Well," he said finally, "this is definitely different from the penthouse." "The nurse will come every morning at 8, Sophia said briskly, refusing to acknowledge the awkwardness. "Physical therapist arrives at 2 every afternoon. Your medication schedule is posted on the refrigerator. I have classes until noon most days, then evening shifts at the diner 3 times a week. The rest of the time I will be studying, so I will need you to keep television volume down. You really hate me, do you not?" The question caught her off guard. She turned to find him watching her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "I do not hate you, Damien. I do not know you well enough to hate you. This is a business arrangement, nothing more." "Then why did you agree to it?" She could have told him about the money, about her parents' security, about her own desperate need for a way out of crushing debt. Instead, she found herself telling a different truth. "Your grandfather is dying. He loves you despite everything you have done to push him away. That mattered enough for me to take this chance." Something shifted in Damien's expression, a crack in the armor of entitled indifference. "He told you about his heart condition?" "Yes." "I assume you did not know?" "Not until after the accident. He kept it from me, said he did not want it to become another excuse for my terrible behavior." Damien's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I wasted so much time being angry at him for things that did not even matter." Sophia felt an unwanted wave of sympathy but pushed it down firmly. She could not afford to feel sorry for him, could not afford to care. This was a job, a transaction, a means to an end. 1 year of professional distance, then she could walk away with her future secured. "The guest futon pulls out into a bed," she said, pointing to the couch. "I will take the main bed since I need to be up early for classes. The bathroom is through that door. Do you need help getting settled?" "I can manage," Damien said quietly, though they both knew that was not entirely true. As Sophia began unpacking the medical supplies that had been delivered earlier, organizing medications and preparing the space for the nurse's morning visit, she felt Damien's eyes on her. When she finally met his gaze, she found something unexpected there, not resentment or anger, but something that looked almost like regret. "Sophia," he said softly, "I am sorry. For what I said at the cathedral, for how I treated you. You did not deserve that." She paused in her organizing, surprised by the apology but unwilling to accept it too easily. "Words are easy, Damien. What matters is whether you mean them." "I know." He looked down at his casted leg, at the physical evidence of his own recklessness. "I know I do not deserve your kindness or your time. But I want you to know that I will try to make this year as painless for you as possible." Sophia nodded curtly, not trusting herself to respond. She finished organizing the supplies in silence, hyper-aware of his presence in her small space, uncertain whether she had made the best decision of her life or the worst mistake imaginable. Only time would tell, and they had 12 months to find out.